the nostalgia, the tradition, the magic, the memories, and the madness in 1,000 points of improvised dialogue. Theme Park Thursday with Dillos Diz on the Improviser's Guide Network.
Now is the time.
Forever?
Miss Tomorrow.
Old.
A minute and a half.
Hashtag always MGM.
Step out to your right.
Old.
The
Drink.
secret staircase.
We always do that.
You are approaching the unloading area.
Behold the majesty of the Sistine Seal.
For the kids.
A salute to all theme parks, but mostly Walt Disney World.
What a cute ending.
Aloha and welcome aboard.
This is Theme Park Thursday with Dillos Diz. She is Jen.
Hello.
And I am Frank, and we are here to offer an apology.
Oh.
We want to say sorry.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize we were apologizing.
You know, some people apologize on Twitter these days, but
Yeah.
we're using this forum here to offer an official apology. On Sunday, if you heard the Hyperion Adventures podcast, we joined Tom and Michelle. We had a great time. We
Yes.
had a
So
lot of
much fun.
laughs.
Yeah.
They are awesome. Again, we are so lucky to be able to become friends with folks in this community who exude such a positive spirit.
Yeah.
However, we partook in some Walt Disney World.
Pie. Oh, I
Pecan,
thought.
the partaking of the pecan pie. We took part in some Walt Disney World trivia,
Yeah.
and
We're exposed for the frauds that we are.
and I was like, what should we do? Should we come on the show and say, look, Jen was recording Magical Mommy Mondays. Go check out that podcast. That was happening just
I did
prior
do it that night.
to the recording. I was live streaming with the Lenny BS. Go to Facebook, facebook.com/Lenny Burrows every other Thursday with the Lenny BS, my alter ego, Renaissance Festival character, Lenny Burrows, Master of Revels, Lord of Misrule, Merrymaker, now late night talk show host on a live
So
stream.
many things.
Hashtag Lenny live stream. I was going to make up excuses. I had the excuses but we have no excuse. We have said it on here before. We are bad test takers.
Oh, well, that's been proven my entire life.
We panic under the pressure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we failed. We failed miserably. And you know, Tom and Michelle mentioned, maybe it'll go light on us next time. Don't.
No.
Michelle, you
We
bring
should
those
just
hard
study.
questions.
Yeah, we'll just study more. Maybe. Probably not. You know, and as proof to the test takers that we are and how just bad we are, we will be releasing our SAT scores.
No, I'll release my GRE scores. I think that's probably what I would be most
I'm not
comfortable
releasing anything. No.
As you know, I have an MFA in dramaturgy, so I had to take the GREs prior to officially beginning my MFA program. I took it with the flu and a bottle of Pedialyte next to the computer terminal. True story.
And you did well on them?
I did as well as I did on the SATs, which proves standardized testing. That's a whole other podcast.
That's another
Don't
episode.
worry about it. It did make me think, though, when we talk about being horrible test takers, that in 2006, I believe, so that's 14 years ago now, I went over to the ABC studios in Lincoln Center, where the daytime edition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire,
That's right.
we're holding auditions for their pop culture edition.
Yeah.
There's a daytime version. I think even Meredith Vieira had left by that point. I already feel like there was another host in the mix. And this is before like, this is when MySpace was just hitting. So like right at the advent of
That was
YouTube.
super cool. Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know what streaming was, like Netflix. What was that? It was discs that you got. I think at that, maybe it wasn't like that.
I don't even know if that was out. I don't think that was out then.
I don't even know what was going on back then. But I feel like for me, after 2006 is when I got old because I just lost touch with pop culture entirely.
I mean, yeah, I think I was going to be your lifeline for pop culture portion.
Yeah.
Was
I mean, I know
that-
you say that I've always been old, and this is that's the gimmick.
It's a fact.
But I really feel like I lost touch with pop culture.
And how
after
old were you
2006.
back then?
In 2006, I was about to turn 32, I guess.
Yeah, well,
Anything.
very old. Yeah.
So I take you got to take 40 question test.
Yeah.
It's multiple choice because it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So
Sure.
I make the cut for the 40
Mhm.
questions because it's multiple choice, and and that's why I like the game show.
Yeah.
It's because it's multiple choice. I have a chance. Then you go through a round of producers,
Right.
and I make it through the first round of producers,
Mm-hmm.
and then I go to the second round of producers. And it was during that second round that I started to feel the test taker dread that I had not experienced. in
That
a very long
old
time.
familiar feeling came back.
And I was like, what happens if I blow it on the $100 question? And I was like, what am I doing? I'm not even on the show. I'm not even
Yeah.
in the hot seat. What
Yeah.
am I doing? And that will lead us here into our topic of discussion this week,
Yes.
because we are huge Who Wants to Be a Millionaire fans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you've listened to the podcast over the 2.5 years or so, you know that we were huge Regis Philbin fans.
Yes.
And if you don't know, he passed away over the weekend at the age of 88.
Mm-hmm.
And we have said before, when the moment arrives, we have no alternative but to make the next episode of Theme Park Thursday a Regis tribute episode.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is where we are.
Yeah.
Buckle in. You get a little bit of Dillo's history probably,
Yeah.
because Regis has played from the other side of the screen
Mm-hmm.
a very significant part in our lives, our family life, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Now, Jen is, if you don't know, the younger sibling.
Again, no one questions who's younger between us. I mean, I think it's clear.
So just in terms of the quick history, we're going to go through. Regis was born in 1931 in New York. He's a
Yeah.
Bronx native. He went to Cardinal Hayes High School. You've probably heard about him talk about this over the years. His friend was freaking Finelli.
Mhm.
He was an NBC page in 30 Rock, and worked with the Tonight Show during the Jack Paar days. Went to California.
Ooh, your New York is coming
California.
out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is a Regis episode.
Yeah, right.
We got to pay tribute to the king of New
Right.
York.
We got to
here.
bring out the accents.
Goes to California, becomes the sidekick on the Joey Bishop show. If you don't know who Joey Bishop was, there's a Rat Pack. It was Frank and Dean and Sammy. And then you had Joey Bishop, and people like, oh, Rickles was the comedian. Don Rickles was the comedian with the Rat. But really, it was Joey Bishop
Right.
with the Rat Pack. So he had his own late night talk show opposite Johnny Carson, and Regis was his Ed McMahon in the early stages there. And there was a big moment in the early going there where Regis walked off the show after presumably ABC wanted to pin the failings of the Joey Bishop show on Regis.
Mm-hmm.
So and there's some, was it staged? Was it not staged? We'll get into Regis's love of wrestling in a second. But that was a big moment for that show, was Regis walking off. And then he went back and forth, kind of coast to coast, stayed in California for a while, talk shows, he did something in St. Louis. So he was, took about 15 years to kind of find his way.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came to New York in the early 80s, 83, 84, somewhere in there, with what we call the morning show,
Mm-hmm.
which was on after Good Morning America at 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. He had Cindy Garvey as his first co-host, and then a couple thereafter. Keep in mind, Jen was born in 1982, which is why I'm reviewing a lot of this history. I was around for some of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1985, Kathy Lee Gifford, then Kathy Lee Johnson, who would sub in for Good Morning America, joined Regis. And they were a pop culture phenomenon in some ways. And their local became national. So let's start there and talk a little bit about Mama Dillo.
Yeah.
Because Regis and Kathy Lee, and probably Regis early on, is how we became introduced to Regis, because obviously Mama Dillo is putting on Regis at 9 a.m.
Yes, every day.
Every day.
Mhm.
Religiously Regis. You know,
Yes.
I was going to try to find a religiously, but it didn't really work. Regiously. Well, you know, Letterman used to say Regiously and Kathy Lee.
Mhm.
What do you think it was, if you get inside Mama Dillo's brain a little bit, that was the draw for Mama Dillo when we were younger?
I mean, Mama Dillo, I feel like, whether she realizes it or not, has the side to her that has been instilled in us to be into pop culture,
Mhm.
to be into, you know, movies and TV shows. And, you know, there are faults she has. Like, she will watch the end of a movie and she'll be okay with that, where it's like, come on, you had to see the whole movie. What are you talking about?
Right.
So, but she has that part of her. So I think a show that was a little different than everything else. It wasn't a news show. It wasn't scripted in this way, but it had a mix of just two people sitting in the morning talking about the news, talking about movies coming out or books coming out or whatever it was, and also had guests on and had the celebrity aspect to it as well. So I think the meeting of those worlds probably intrigued her to, you know, it was the background noise. It was the constant of our week every week. So
Yeah, to talk about Mama Dillo's pop culture for a second, and I'm sure she's perfectly fine with me saying this out loud. Like, if you want to trace from 1962 to 2006, let's keep using 2006 as a benchmark here.
okay.
You would make a line from Mama Dillo's greatest love being the Beatles
Yeah.
to Barry Manilow.
Yeah.
Then she had children.
Yeah.
And then the Backstreet Boys
Yeah.
in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor,
Yes.
beginning with Moulin Rouge.
You're missing Kevin Costner before.
I would say that
Backstreet
Kevin
Boys.
Costner was while she was raising her children. All right,
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Kevin Costner, Backstreet Boys,
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor,
Mm-hmm.
Jersey Boys.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
On Broadway.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Like, that is the timeline. If you want to follow Mama Dillo's pop culture timeline,
Yes.
that is it right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I would say over this is this idea of Regis throughout.
Yes.
And, you know, the other thing we say a lot about Mama Dillo is that I feel like, you know, she was strategically planting seeds of some kind. in our
Yeah.
brains.
Always. Mm-hmm.
And you've heard all the tributes and everyone tweeting and everyone speaking on shows about how good of a person Regis was. That
Yeah.
he was the nicest person to everybody, greeted everyone, talked to everyone. We can speak to that in a second, personally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Mama Dillo is like, this is a good person.
Right. Yeah.
like,
Mm-hmm.
like, we're gonna put this on because he's a good person.
Yeah.
And that came through the screen. The likability came through the screen,
Yeah.
even when he was being a cranky old man.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, which
Ranting
again,
and raving and
ranting and
yeah.
raving, which you don't get to hear at all on Theme
Yeah.
Park Thursday, which Dillo did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in 1988, September 1988, Regis and Kathy Lee went syndicate, went across the country, Buena Vista Television,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, again, took off as a national, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, it still carries over. Kelly Ripa and Ryan Seacrest on Monday were talking about how people still call the show Regis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go put on Regis in the morning, go to watch Regis. I saw
Yes.
you on Regis. That
Yeah.
is what they say.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So parallel to that is this other thing that's happening in the 1980s,
Mhm.
which is on Christmas Day and on Easter Sunday, we're getting Walt Disney World parades.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Disney parades, I guess, because sometimes they did remotes from Disneyland.
Yeah.
And Joan London was typically the female host.
Mhm.
Ben Vereen was in there. Alan Thicke was in there. I more remember Alan Thicke. But Regis was the man on the street.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So as you especially started going to Walt Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
Regis became the person who was going to tell us what would happen next.
Yep.
In Walt Disney World. And he was the one interacting with all the Disney fans who were like us, all the families, all the kids, everyone lined up on Main Street on Christmas morning. Regis, in some ways, and I really didn't think about it until I started watching a lot of these clips, I was like, oh, Regis is the one who got me pumped for all this Disney stuff. As much as the Disney Channel Dateline Disney, and our grandmother would send us Orlando Sentinel articles from Florida. She lived in Ocala. Like, there were those, but it was really Regis who, even after he became host, was the one who was up. Here's what's coming next from Disney. And I don't know how early. Do you remember more Regis co-hosting than you do Regis as the guy walking up and down Main Street talking to everybody? What do you remember?
Yeah, I think I definitely remember more co-host Reg than on the street, but I was watching some of those clips back and immediately thinking, because we've had a slew of guests on the show recently, and we always make the common denominator, and the common thread between all of them is the audience interaction and how they connect. And that's what he did. He went out there. Where are you from? Where are you from? Oh, and just shouting people out. So it was, we at that point were probably going once a year to Disney. So it was our in between going to Disney taste of it, because, back then there's no internet, there's nothing. There's no YouTube to just watch. We had our home videos to watch if we needed a fix. Or Regis was showing us what would be there the next time we were there. And, watching some of these clips back and seeing, MGM being built and Typhoon Lagoon being built and all these, it's just so crazy and gives me all those feels of this was the foundation of it all. And he was there telling us, and it's just, I do feel that, to your point of, oh, this is a good person, I'll have him on, he's okay. He absolutely felt like a member of the family in our life, I guess, because he was talked about oh, well, Reach said, that line started so many conversations and sentences in our house growing up of oh, well, did you hear Reach this morning? Whatever, that then you connect him to Disney, and you're just, it's the entire nostalgia ball for us. And he was kind of leading that, I think, along the way.
Yeah, he was kind of the voice of Disney nostalgia in some ways, where we had Louis Gravance on in March, and he talks about how he remembers going to his family restaurant and Walt was on doing The Wonderful World of Disney, and that would be the Sunday night thing. That basically is what Regis was to us in the 80s. And you mentioned Typhoon Lagoon and MGM, and there's the 1987 Christmas parade, and this shout out Sam's Disney Diary on YouTube, because he's got full parades and he's strung together all these Regis clips. Yeah. And 1987, it is literally basically the peak of here we go. You're now a Walt Disney World nut, because Grand Floridian was getting built, Indoorway was getting built, and Illuminations were starting, and he was sitting in the middle of muddy Typhoon Lagoon and MGM and Pleasure Island. It's these are all the things that hit in 89 when I was 14 going on 15. And that was it. It was all this new stuff that was happening. Yeah. And to see it all in kind of this 5-minute segment, because, previously he took a ride on the Hydrolators and Before the Living Seas opened, and then later on did Alien Encounter and Tower of Terror. He was always game for that kind of stuff, even on Regis and Kathy Lee and Regis and Kelly. Yeah. But to see it kind of in that, I was like, oh, this is everything I used to wait for. It was Regis on Christmas Day telling me what I should be getting excited about.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And even as, I know the parade is somewhat kind of sort of still around, but, once Regis wasn't really a part of it, we were oh, well, but, and it, because he was it for us. He was that pull for us to it, because you connected our two worlds. We saw him every morning in our house. Disney was our second home in our family vacation, and you married them. And it was one of the best parts of Christmas Day for us was turning on the parade and seeing him. And because, he is from New York, and the show was based in New York, and all these things, it's just all these connections to us. So, it was really crazy watching those clips back on YouTube.
No, and you're spot on with the interactive environment as well, where again these things that we're talking, Scotty Kilwine and Louie and the Public Works guys and all these performers that we crave this interactive environment. And in a lot of ways, it's because Regis was always man on the street interviews, not just on Main Street, but on his own show, talking to, the people on the trivia question every day. Like he just knew how to engage everyone. And seeing that in live form with a lot of the performers in Disney, like that's the connection.
Yeah, for sure.
And totally wild. He didn't start co-hosting with Joan London until 91, Christmas 91. And then what I thought was funny was that there's a break, and the break comes after you and Papa Dillo were in the Magic Kingdom on Christmas Day, 1995. That was the last one Regis co-hosted for 6 years.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So talk about, you got like a little picture from the side and things like that, but talk about going to see the Christmas parade in the Magic Kingdom in 1995.
It was kind of crazy. So I think that was your first Christmas when you lived down there, right?
Yeah.
So you were working. I think you've told the story from your perspective of what your Christmas Day that year was like, working closely with Woody. And I think Mama Dillo was in Ocala visiting Grandma Dillo, even though she's not Dillo, but whatever. So Papa Dillo and I decided we would go in to Magic Kingdom early on Christmas morning and see what we could see of the parade and see what was going on, because Papa Dillo too, very into all of that, very into the movies and behind the scenes kind of things and seeing what we could do and all
he
of
would
that.
never let you on that he's into all of that.
No, and totally
100% into it.
Totally a fan of Regis, but also like, oh, you got him on again,
watch
but
Regis again.
Yeah, exactly. But totally into it. So, on Christmas morning, we went in. I really don't think I don't know what I expected to see. I don't think I expected to see too much, or like maybe we wouldn't even get in to, it would be too crowded or whatever it was. But yeah, we were able to see him and Joan London like crossing over, going to their seats. And it was like, what? That's Regis. He's in front of me and we're in Disney and this is Christmas and it's amazing. Yeah.
It's all the things.
It's everything at once. So yeah, that was pretty amazing. Papa Dillo got a big kick out of that. And yeah, it just brought it all to life and made it all real. We, spent a lot of the time then going on all the rides because everyone was in the front of the park, so we were in the back. But yeah, that was my first in-person sighting of Regis, and it was like one of the greatest moments ever because it was in Disney. So,
and going back to the other thing you said earlier about the pop culture is that I think that not only was Regis kind of this representation of pop culture, I think the success of the show is because it was the MTV generation in the 80s and everything like that, but he was tapped into these other elements where he was presenting himself as an ordinary guy who was into extraordinary things. And so with the Disney thing, like he had, prior to MGM, I mean, granted, Regis and Kathy Lee was syndicated by Buena Vista Television, so there's the connection. Yeah. But, I remember the Super Stretch Limhouse scene that they were promoting for the big tour for MGM opening, and Michael Eisner was there, and Mickey was I thought it was for Mickey's 60th birthday, but it was for the opening of MGM. Like, I remember that on his show. But, into Disney, into wrestling, again, like just recognized how these larger than life elements connected the audience. And then he was able to blend that with his ordinary guy routine that also connected to the audience. So it combined this performer audience dynamic and the extraordinary, like he was theater, basically. He was doing theater on live television. And that was really, you had Carson and you had Letterman and Late Night and everything like that. But he was now bringing that in a new way. Talked about, everyone says, the host chat format was his creation. Those first 15 minutes, completely improvised with Kathy Lee. It's what everyone, grabs hold to. I mentioned that, like, I didn't know what improv was, but when it was explained to me, it was like, oh, it's like Regis and Kathy Lee the first 15 minutes. And that's how I figured out what improvisation was. And I really went back and I watched Regis and Kathy Lee's first national show in September of 1988. And just like he comes right out of the gate about talking about leaving his keys in the ignition overnight in New York City. Like, he's like, what am I doing? I'm a New Yorker. How do I live like this? And immediately raising the stakes of like the big improv thing, like just, raise it, heighten it, and he was a master of that. And that pop culture, that link that he had, that ability to see what people were into, he managed to fight basically ABC to become the host of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in 1999. And, first, it was like a 2-week event in August of 1999, and then like a 2-week event in November. And then, it took over. But he would joke for years that he saved ABC. Disney bought ABC a few years earlier. You can make the argument that Regis saved ABC by, at the very least, keeping it in the race, because it was must-see TV, and it was ER, and it was Friends, and it was the end of Seinfeld, was like all that stuff was happening. And Regis was able to get in there and recognize what the next big thing was. And Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was huge in our house. And definitely how we roped Papa Dillo into more Regis love, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember, because in 99, I was still living in Florida for about 6 more months. You were going into your senior year of high school. Can you recall watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in those early?
Oh, yeah. I can recall watching it in your apartment in Orlando. Yeah.
Probably true too.
But and just to go back for a second, I had read his book, How I Got This Way, How I Got This Way, right? And that was insanely eye-opening to me, because to know how much he had done that no one really talked about or knew about before ABC and before all of that. I think that aspect plays into it too, where, to your point of the larger than life and how it connects to the audience, it's also, this is what I love to do, and I'm doing everything. I'm just going to keep trying to do things and see what sticks and see what happens and just keep trying to be me while connecting with different types of people and all of that. So I think that also kind of played through always for him. But yes, for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I definitely remember watching it in your apartment. It was a huge game show too, because I feel like there hadn't been many new game shows for a while. It was kind of the same things. And this was well, and it had Regis, so it was connecting you again, where you're bringing the morning to the night, and he was working his butt off again, doing morning and nights of the show, and it was an event, even when they just kept it 2 weeks and that was the event. But as the show kept going, it was always an event. It always felt that way.
If you you go back, what game shows were happening when we were growing up? If you look at the end of Final Jeopardy or the last game in Wheel of Fortune, it didn't have the elements of drama with the lighting and the shift and the whole thing that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire had. But again, it was this extraordinary high stakes situation. You're playing for $1 million. You lose here, you drop down. Oh, you're going for 32. But if you get it wrong, you go into 1,000. If you know $500,000, you could lose 400. High stakes elements. And again, with the ordinary guy playing, the one to keep you engaged, to keep you going. And I went back over the weekend and watched a bunch of old millionaire moments. Obviously the John Carpenter, the first guy who won the million, with him saying Richard Nixon was the president on Laughing, but it has been 21 years and I will still get my hair on my arm standing up and the goosebumps when Regis goes, he just won $1 million.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
That is it. It is the best. And I'm not going to remember the second guy's name today, but I watched that one this afternoon, Daniel. And, he had all 3 lifelines left.
Yeah.
And so he does the 50-50, and he gets the 50-50 split. And so then he polls the audience, and the audience has it one way. And Regis is like, I know you know the answer. He's like, you know the answer. You're toying with me. You know, so Regis is like threading the needle throughout. And then the guy phones his friend. You can hear the phone a friend saying, everyone in the room is like, yes, we got it, 100%. The guy is still like, let me think about it, you know, because you can see like, it's 100%, but what if I lose $468,000? And Regis is like, I know you got it, you know, and it's that connectivity that he had. Now, conversely, the Celebrity Millionaire I watched with Norm Macdonald, when he talks Norm Macdonald out of the, like, he's like, you're gonna lose that 450,000 if you, you know, and Norm Macdonald, it's a gambler. So, and I was like, all right. And he would have gotten it right for $1 million. And it's like, oh, Regis, did Regis talk him out of it? What just happened? You know, so those little, again, he's able to connect with so many people and on all levels. And that's, you know, people say, oh, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire got run into the ground. They put it on like 3 times a week, every week. It was too much. So maybe it was 3 years at its peak. But everybody talked about, like, I would say prior to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, American Idol. Like, it was Regis and Survivor in those couple of years. That's like what you talked about. And you know, it's amazing again that he was kind of this figure in pop culture.
And no, I think, and I feel like, you know, if you know his early days, he was taking a lot of chances. Not everything was really working out for him, and he just, you know, he was trying different things. But then at some point, it felt like whatever he touches is gold. Like, keep Regis involved, because it'll get you a different audience, or it will keep an audience, or it'll grow your audience, or whatever it was. But he's absolutely, you know, a pop culture phenomenon and as himself.
Now Kathy Lee left 20 years ago this summer. It was 2000 that
Crazy.
She left, which is nuts. And people are like, oh, what's going to happen? It's never going to be the same. You know, there was a year that Regis was, you know, just running through co-hosts, kind of like you see now with other daytime talk shows where they try people out. You know, there's always Regis won the Emmy for the first time the year that Kathy Lee wasn't with him. Listen, folks, before there was social media and the Twitter and the hate on the social media, there was people talking about Kathy Lee Gifford all the time. Unwarranted, because again, she was the perfect partner for Regis. I will still say, and we'll get more, I have a lot to say about Letterman in a second, that when she hosted Letterman, when he had his heart surgery, it was one of the best co-hosting jobs during that time. Like, her show was great. I was like, oh, you know, but it was like, wow. And I didn't think, I like Kathy Lee compared to what other people would say about her. But like that in particular, I was like, oh my God, they're missing out on like a whole thing here with Kathy Lee Gifford. But then kind of, and Kelly Ripa talked about this, but she, you know, she said, oh, me getting the gig was an accident. And I think one of her first times, she was on All My Children, and one of her first times guest hosting, there was a psychic on that first episode in 1988, he had an astrologer come out right away to predict, because he's always like, I consult astrologers and they tell me things and then I don't listen to them, and then they were right and I was wrong. You know, so he hasn't, like, so again, those extraordinary elements that he was connecting to that were big in the 80s. He was so, he has like a psychic on of some kind, and who talks about Kelly Ripa having a baby, and she's like, I have not told anybody that I'm pregnant or anything, and immediately the audience like connected to that and made Kelly Ripa a star. But the show was just as good when she became the regular co-host with him, you know, and if not, I mean, Daryl Hammond and Amy Poehler doing them on SNL is always what I think about. In terms of when Kelly Ripa first got on the show. And it's funny to me that the gap between Walt Disney World, Christmas Parade, and Christmas Parade from it was 96 to when Kelly Ripa came on. And in 2000, they didn't even do one. I don't even know why. Like, I'll have to look deeper into it. But they didn't even have the parade. I think they did like a thing.
Right.
but didn't have a parade. And then, oh, lo and behold, let's bring Regis back in 2001. He's the biggest thing going.
Yeah.
And then Kelly Ripa was with him after that. And it was interesting that it was Regis and Kelly, and because Ryan Seacrest said it on the show, and I was like, what? So when Ryan Seacrest became the man on the street, they won, and the three of them won an Emmy. That was Ryan Seacrest's first Emmy, was for the Christmas parade with the two of them. But so do you remember, like, do you lean one way or the other with Kathy Lee or with Kelly Ripa? What say you? Because you're a big soap opera weekend person.
I am. You know, I think the gut says Kathy Lee just because of the nostalgic aspect of it. And she was, you know, I know he had a previous co-host, but to me, she's the OG. So, but I do, you know, because I was a little older when Kelly Ripa came on, that I do remember those early days, and I was a big soap opera person and all of that. So I liked the joining of the two worlds there, and I thought they meshed well, especially that at that point Regis was a little older and now he had someone younger. It was kind of a good balance of, you know, keeping him young in a way and keeping him on his toes a little more of like what was going on with someone who was kind of just starting out and just starting a family and all of that. So there was, you know, that morning chat kind of shifted a little bit with, you know, all these different things that are going on for her. And while he was kind of out on the town, as she's like, you know, momming at home and all of that. So I thought they had a good dynamic. I mean, and so I don't think, you know, I'm sure the initial was like, oh, there's change and I can't believe it because that's how we roll. But I think, you know, over time I was like, yeah, no, this makes sense. And this feels comfortable and they seem comfortable together, at least from the outside view.
So while all this is going on, there's this other element that's happening. I mean, I feel like my worshiping of Regis goes is almost like retroactive. Like I go backwards. Like the more I had learned as a performer, I went back and pulled from Regis. And definitely one of the things that I talk about, especially as a Renaissance Festival character, is this idea of high status and low status, like the character transfer, and like what does that mean in comedy or whatever? You know, it's like Elmer Fudd should have Elmer Fudd should have, it has the status over Bugs Bunny. I mean, Bugs Bunny is a bunny and he is a hunter. But Bugs Bunny always gets the upper hand, and that's where the comedy comes into play. So high status, low status, but there's a shift so that you get the funny. And that was the other thing that Regis was a master of. And definitely with both Kathy Lee and Kelly, because he was not tech savvy. He had a younger co-host. They were more hip to what was going on in the world, where Regis was always playing catch up, whether he was really, you know, putting it on or not. Nobody knows, but always couldn't put something together, couldn't get batteries in something. It was always the way. But there's also this other part that started happening for me when I started getting into performing is, you know, Letterman moved to CBS and Regis became a big guest a couple of times, I mean, multiple times a year on Letterman. So you got to see Regis in a different context than just the morning chat on the street guy. You got to see him more in this comedic role. I mean, I don't know how much late night did you watch? Like, when did you start really watching late night? I mean, in general, did you, if you watched Leno or Letterman or whatever?
I mean, I think Letterman, because he was always kind of the staple in the house. So, you know, I don't know if I have these pinpoint moments of when I started watching, or it just always seemed natural. So whenever I was staying up later, you know, and he was on, and I would watch with Mama Dillo, or if we were out somewhere or whatever it was. And so it always, you know, I feel like it was kind of like sports teams, Leno and Letterman, you know, like you were really just with one, you weren't with both. So we were always Letterman people, I guess. So, you know, and seeing familiar faces pop up on Letterman, and all the, you know, hijinks he had, and all the little skits he would do, and the bits, and all these little things. always connected more to all of us, I think. And it was, Regis being carried over into the nighttime. So it was like a little different. It's a little different personality from him, just because he's, playing a different version of himself to, play to a different audience, because it's not the morning audience. And so it was fun to see them play off each other, Letterman and Regis.
And Regis. Yeah. I mean, I went back and watched I watched a couple of segments. One was after he left the live show in the morning, and that one I hadn't seen. I don't remember seeing it, but they were at the revival of Billy Crystal's 700 Sundays on Broadway, and basically the whole 18 minutes is this one story, basically. And Regis goes with Joy, his wife, to the show, and in front he noticed that Paul is sitting next to Letterman. And Letterman is not giving him the time of day. So Regis is it's Regis thinking like, hey, big man, blah, blah, blah. He's trying to get involved, and Letterman's not having it. So Regis is like getting worked up that he's getting. So Regis is giving the detailed Regis story. So again, if we're talking about the high status, low status transfer, Letterman is the host with the high status, but he's going to elevate Regis as the guest in theory. He's going to give him the status because you are my guest and you are welcome, and I will put you in a positive light. But it's the Letterman-Regis dynamic. So Regis gets a little bit of a low status, and Letterman's just giving him a hard time. And he's just like, how long is this story? He's looking at his watch, this whole thing. Letterman eventually is like, do I have to, I have to take a phone call. He leaves the stage. Regis's first instinct is go, all right, I'm going to take over the desk. He goes behind the desk and sits down to continue the story. And so again, the high status. So he gets the laugh for that. And then goes, what? I have to go to a commercial? All right, I got back, and then they came back from the commercial and got right back into it. And they were so, like, you could just watch them switch the, the status back and forth. And it was just so many laughs over one story that was really about nothing, like just saying hello at a Broadway show. And it's just so much fun. But the one I really watched, because I saw the tweet about it, is that you can watch the whole first episode of Letterman after 9/11. And Regis was a guest on the show that night. So I think it was like the 17th of September. It was like a week later. Yeah, the 11th was on a Tuesday. There was the following Monday. And, Letterman is obviously emotional. He is like just trying to get it all out of his system, like just to talk about how he feels and how he's felt all week and the whole thing. And people are applauding where they need to applaud and are quiet where they need to be quiet. And finally Letterman's like, well, thank God Regis is here, so we have someone to make fun of, and laugh. And it was like, just, Letterman tweeted, which Letterman never tweets, that, Regis was superlative. He put him in the same line as Carson, which is like an amazing thing to like even have put in for Letterman, especially for him to be like Regis and Carson. But also said, he also wrote in a tweet, he knew how to take a punch. And in the 90s, like, he would have Regis run out in like a tank top because he had like his exercise video, and Regis would like throw the videos out to the crowd and just be a maniac. And then to see it kind of build into just like this really comedy routine rapport that the two of them have, it again added this extra layer of the style of entertainer that Regis was. And you look to all these, you see how he, has enhanced other people. Other people will say, oh, I wouldn't be what I'm doing if it wasn't for Regis. This wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Regis. It's a really an amazing thing for, again, because he played that ordinary man role. I don't know, you don't really talk about him in the same heightened way that you would about, people still talk about Johnny Carson to this day. It's, that's definitely a heightened thing, and I say for myself, where people turn to Johnny Carson or George Carlin, like Regis was my comedy guy because he was able to, again, connect with people, improvise, adapt, accept anything that was given to him and make it funny. And think of the audience first, and in a way that was always entertaining. He always, and you always can kind of see behind the cantankerous old man, that it was someone just really enjoying what he was doing.
Yeah, he was always under the radar that way. And I don't know if, sometimes I think if actors or celebrities, when they live in New York, it's because they can kind of live that way. They can kind of just come and go as they please. The paparazzi's here or whatever. But there is a thing with New Yorkers where we're like, oh yeah, there's so-and-so walking down the street, or, I mean, not us, because obviously we go crazy when we see people, but, or people ride subways with celebrities all the time. And like, they're, whereas if you go to LA or someplace else, it's a bigger thing to see celebrities and they're being bombarded all the time. So I feel like that the New Yorker aspect of him that he grew up being, but also being a New York celebrity and being able to kind of go about his days and live his life and then come out and put on a show and then kind of retreat again, it always kind of kept him. And I guess because he was always popular, but, the height of his career was also before, social media and all these things that maybe that helped too. But he was always relatable, and his, kind of how him and Letterman can take a story and make it, 10 stories in one. That's how every morning was for him. He would talk about going out to dinner with like Howard Stern, and it's like, let me tell you these long stories, or, whoever it was. And there would be so many details and just the littlest things he would make funny, of just in the end, you guys just went out to dinner together? Okay, cool. But, there's all these little bits and pieces of the story that would heighten the experience and make you feel like you were there. And then, you laugh over all of it. But
yeah. And, a lot of people say when athletes or other people talk about themselves in the third person, that you talk about The Rock, when The Rock was wrestling, The Rock says this, and The Rock says, know your role and shut your mouth. But Regis was doing that shtick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What about Regis? What about, Regis is here now. Everybody, all of that heightened character, was so evident in him. About 5 years ago, I was leaving, and this is only I'm going to name drop for a second. Name drop. About 2 years ago, at my place of employment, Stephen Colbert was walking towards me prior to a concert. And he's an improviser. Yeah. And so he's a big eye contact person. And from like 30 feet away, he made eye contact with me and like knew that I worked there. It was just and so he like beelined to me for like help. And so then I helped him for like the next 10 minutes, and he was engaging and sociable, and it was a whole thing. But he was super engaging, but also it reminded me of stories that you heard about Regis, where you could walk around Lincoln Center and Columbus Circle, all that area. And if you ran into Regis, he was going to talk to you, which almost happened to me outside Letterman about 5 years ago, when I was walking past the stage door and Regis was like walking towards me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm about to have a conversation with Regis. There was no greeting. It was just the way that we were walking towards each other. I was like, oh, I'm about to talk to Regis. Yeah. And then he got whisked away somewhere else. But I was like, oh. But prior to that, 9 years ago in 2011, you mentioned the book, How I Got This Way. We both went to separate book signings. Yeah. For you out on Long Island and me in Manhattan. Tell me what, prompted you to like, I have to go to this book signing.
Well, Regis was going to be in my town. So, I mean, if he's coming to your town, it was like, wait, what? He's going to be here? And did I go to a book signing prior to that? I don't think I did. I think that was like my first ever book signing. And I'm like, I don't even know how all this works and whatever. But, going there, you go earlier in the day, you get your book, because your book is kind of like your spot in line or whatever it is. And so when we went back later in the day, just this huge crowd, and Long Island, I love you, but my goodness, the Long Islanders that were out for Regis. But you feel the love in the room for Regis, and he, at that point, he spoke to everyone for a few minutes, so it was like a big crowd, and it was kind of hard to see him from where I was, but he was talking to everyone. People were shouting things out and asking about Kelly, and he was like, Kelly's, I don't know if he said one of the most beautiful or the most beautiful person, I've ever seen, and all this kind of stuff. And, he he could have just showed up at a desk and invited people in and signed the book and left, but he engaged the audience. He said hello. He responded to things being shouted out. He took a few questions, you know, and then they kind of brought him upstairs to this separate area and, you know, got to wait online and have the book signed. And it was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, I'm about to meet Regis. And, you know, and I have since been to a book signing, and I've also seen other book signings where people are like, oh yeah, thanks so much, head down, sign the book. Oh yeah, what? He engaged. He made eye contact. He looked up. Mama Dillo was very like, look at how he's looking at you. Like, just, you know, like, but he, you know, he brought you into the eye contact, and he, you know, he thanked me, and, you know, I don't even remember what I said to him. I probably mentioned how, you know, I grew up watching him, and, you know, thank you for everything and all of that kind of stuff. But he was very down to earth and appreciative and just engaging everyone that stopped at the table and took pictures and did it all. But I think that was 4 days after you met him.
Yeah, it was yeah, I think yours was the second.
Yeah.
Was not second, but it was of the two of us. You went
Yeah.
second, I guess. Yeah, mine was in Manhattan, and, you know, similarly, again, engaging everyone, talking to everyone. You know, I've been to book signings where, oh, you know, put on the little Post-it note what you wanted to say, and, you know, and you just get the name.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, but I had to Frank there.
Yeah.
Like, I had my name.
Can I have a two? No? Okay.
No, not at
Great.
all. Okay. And, you know, but Regis wrote to, you know, Frank, and I had one for Mrs. Dillo's godmother that I had signed. So, because I was going to meet Mrs. Dillo's godmother for the first time at Thanksgiving, and that was a big deal. So I needed to present.
Yes,
she was
of course.
a huge Regis fan, and I had to present the book. And again, he was engaging everyone. Like, I'm not sitting there going, am I going to thank him? Like, am I going to tell him how much, like, I look up to him as, like, because I was like, you know, he's a talk show. I'm like, is he going to understand how I hold him in regards in terms of comedy? Is he going to understand that? And I did. I managed to get out, like, how much his appearances on Letterman and just his ability to take a lower position for the sake of the, like, he understood everything I was saying. And I said, and, you know, and he said it in that tone of like, you know, thanks so much for saying that, Frank, that means a lot. Like, you know, like, you know, okay, great. Like, what do I do? I'm gonna cry. And you know, but it felt like something I had to do. And you know, to this day, I think it's hilarious that you and I have been to many live tapings of shows. Yeah. We've been to Montel, we've been to Colbert, we've been to The View. That's right. and the two people. I've been to Fallon, and you know, the two people that I hold, like, up here, like, I can't, I don't think I would have been able to sit through a live taping of Regis or Letterman, and I never did it. Like, never went to Regis, never went to Letterman. I tried to get into Letterman's last show, missed it by 10 people in the you know, the understudy line was the word I'm looking for. The standby? The standby line, thank you. Yeah. And, like, but, you know, that I was like, I don't think I could contain myself being in that studio watching them live. Yeah. You know, and that's why I never did it, which is ridiculous. Yeah, yeah. But beat myself up over that just a little. What else? What else do we need to say about Regis here? So Regis has a quote. I mean, there's many Regis quotes, but I had actually tweeted this quote back in 2011, probably right before I was going to see him, or maybe right after, or what it was, but which is, you've got to entertain people with the story. And I feel like, you know, so many people talk about Regis and they wouldn't be where they are without him. And we have semi-joked, but we're being serious, that a lot of what we do here, not on purpose, not in a conscious way, is absolutely based on that morning chat. And
there are times we text and go, did you see this? I guess we'll have to talk about this. And we don't say our opinions and we don't talk it out until we get here, so that it is organic and it is our actual reactions to it and feeding off of each other and all of it. And, our stories of, I think, am I going to cry on this episode? I've only cried on Magical Mommy Mondays, but I might cry on this episode. But our stories of growing up and all of that, and like, I don't think we always succeed at making it entertaining, but we try to make just our trips as kids, entertaining. And Papa Dillo and Mama Dillo have become like characters of this, even though it's our real life and we're just talking about it. But it's absolutely based on, this was our life growing up. This man was on in our house morning or night or in between, and he had such an impact on us. And I'm not in entertainment. I am not an actor, improviser, or anything of the sort. If I could hide under a rock, I would. But he had an impact on me. And I feel like, seeing this news this weekend will be one of those things I will always remember where I was, which was in a Costco parking lot. But, I literally saw it and like gasped. And I thought, talking to Mr. Snidillo that night, we were saying, he just, and I think Kelly Ripa actually said this, which I saw after, but, Regis was always one of those people like, sure, he's getting older, but I mean, he's going to be one of those people that's like around forever. He's going to be, like 100 years old and he'll still be, and so sure, most people, when you think like, 88, yeah. No, I didn't think this was coming. So it was a huge shock. But, he absolutely has played a role in this podcast, even though he would never think or know that. But yeah.
Well, I think his death plays into his unpredictability because, I too thought was like, it'll be after he turns 90. He'll be in his 90s.
Yeah.
Why am I forecasting that? He had heart issues. He had angioplasties. He had his time as the Christmas parade host. He had hip surgery. Like he was getting older. These are the reasons. But I always assumed like, first we're gonna hear that he was hospitalized, so it'll prepare me, and it'll happen during the week. Like, why have I concocted how it would go in my head? So yeah, when you texted me, did you see the news? I was like, oh God.
And I think I followed it with brace for impact because it was. Yeah.
And so I think I'm still going through the stages. I think I'm still kind of in denial. And I have been watching Regis stuff for 4 days now, and reading stuff about Regis for 4 days.
Yeah.
He became a Disney legend in 2011. And that from his Man on the Street in the early 80s, to, the fact that you can still go watch this stuff on YouTube. It's going to live there forever. Yes. And he is part of this Disney nostalgic lore forever. And I will follow up your statement by saying, I keep going and looking to Regis for inspiration retroactively almost because, all the comedy stuff, when I was an entertainer, how do I improvise with people? How do I get people on the street to improvise with me and engage them and get them into the bit? And now we're talking about host chat stuff all the time. And it's like, that's how he did it. Yeah. You text me about something. I'm not going to talk about it. We'll talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
And, obviously to get to that level is, unattainable. But the idea of embodying the spirit and being able to, of course I would have loved to have been a stand-up comedian, a talk show host, whatever. But, being able to even find it in some way is, it's amazing to me how Regis keeps finding his way back into my life to inspire me in this way. And, and going back and watching all these clips, it's a constant reminder and it's astounding. And we've said it about other people. You know, when we talked to Genevieve Goings, we were talking about how, you know, she was the voice of this Disney generation in the 2000s in many ways, you know, and yeah, you hit it with like Regis is basically the voice of our Disney nostalgia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that I probably would cement right now and say, that's it. Like Regis would make me excited for Disney. Yeah. And that is now sustained for all time. So yeah, I'm not, I don't think I would cry right now because I don't think I have accepted it completely yet. And I don't know what'll do it. I've tried. I'm like, all right, I'll watch Kelly and Ryan this morning. Okay, Fallon's the only one not in reruns on Monday night. Let me see if he says something. I haven't found that yet. The outlet, it'll probably take me by surprise at some point. Obviously. But, you know, like
I'm more of a crier than you.
I mean, accurate, but I'm like, who will get the Letterman interview? I want Letterman to talk to somebody because that's the one that'll probably would get me is if Letterman talk to someone about Regis. I think you know because I think his tweet almost got me. Yeah. When I read the tweet, I was like,
yeah, I know. And did you see what Kathy Lee said? How she saw him like 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Oh, that got me a little bit.
I mean, and you know, and it's such an interesting thing because Regis was so go, hustle. You know, when we talk about people who hustle now, like Regis is the flag bearer of the hustle. Yeah. He hustled all the time. Yes. He wasn't doing, I mean, you know, much in the vein of the Vegas performer, you know, you would see Leno Leno would do the Tonight Show and then go to Vegas for the weekend. Yeah. You know, Regis was doing his nightclub act, as Letterman would call it, with Don Rickles in you know, Foxwoods over the weekend after doing the whole week of shows. Like he constantly went. And so listening to Kathy Lee talk about having seen him, you know, and then also when she saw him in January, again, you know, when you can't hustle for 4 months, you know, it's wild. And, you know, it's also inspiring to make you want to hustle. Right. Like, just keep going, keep pushing. As you said, you know, he kept trying to see what would hit, you know, and wasn't afraid to present his foibles when things didn't go well for him. Like that's what his Letterman bits were for. Like if there was something that didn't go well, he wasn't afraid to talk about it and use it as a resource for the audience's sake. And that's really something. I thought about maybe creating, you know, we joked on the Hyperion Adventures podcast about how we have our hands in a lot of projects. You do the Magical Mommies podcast. We're with the Monday Morning Monorail podcast on Tuesdays with the Parks and Monorail's Most Magical Hour on our YouTube page. You know, Theme Park Thursday. We have the Forever 44 Fedora Club. There's the shirt right there. You know, so we're doing a lot of things. And I was like, I think we need to do something for Regis. Yeah. And so I was like trying to just rack my brain a little bit. And the only thing that I could come up with is to create like a category. And instead of like icons, like it would be like, instead of like a Dillos Diz icon, it would be Dillos Diz Nostalgicon, where they are these icons of nostalgia. Right. And that Regis would be the first honoree of the Dillos Diz Nostalgicon.
Oh, yeah. I feel like he would have to be at the top, you know, like if there's like a branching or something that happens.
Yeah. So it was something that I was blue skying in my brain about whether it was like, does this need to be something? Could we properly, like, what would we do? And when would we have another Nostalgicon? Because I feel like you have Regis, and then where do you go from Regis? I don't know where you go.
Perhaps we need to start lower and build up. Not that anyone would be low, but, you know, just...
So, you know, let's hear feedback, I guess, out there in listener land of whether you want to see some Dillos Diz Nostalgicons. Yeah. And we'll go from there to create yet something else for us to do. As
trading cards.
Trading cards. Oh, Nostalgicon trading cards.
Yeah.
Talk
Dillos
to our
Diz
pal.
Nostalgicon.
Our pal Nate Hardy might be all over that.
Oh, yeah.
Recently named the Treasure-storian of the Forever 44.
So exciting.
Fedora Club. What's happening? Next meeting, August 13th with the Rocketeer.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we'll just binge watch a lot of Regis and Kathy Lee episodes
Yeah, right.
on
That'd be it.
YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But we knew this would not be an easy episode to
No,
talk about.
I can't believe I made it through.
The month of August, we've got some guests planned.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, we planned.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. I think we have 3 guests lined up for August.
Do we?
I think so.
That's exciting.
Just whenever we have guests, we're like, okay, we just got to get to the recording so that we know it's official. So we have some guests lined up for August, but we could not have not done this episode because of what Regis Philbin has been in our lives and what you know of the Theme Park Thursday podcast. A lot, most, if not all of it, whether we're interviewing people or just chatting it up here like we are this week, is greatly attributed to the legend that Regis Philbin was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, until next week, she's Jen, and I'm Frank. Bye-bye.
This is...